in early 2020, we were seeking to come to Italy. We had all of the funding in place and everything. And in that year, we experienced a couple of miscarriages. One was around 4 or 5 weeks, and then another was between 8 and 10 weeks. It was a challenging season to walk through, to experience the joy of, the discovery of finding out, oh man, she got a positive pregnancy test. Oh man, she got 2. And then to move on to the devastation of man, this sucks. We've experienced this devastating loss. The expectations were shattered. Our hearts were shattered. Really, it was a really challenging season, and it was really hard to put ourselves in a position to trust again, to try again, because it was such a hard thing to experience.
When families or couples go through miscarriage, people kind of understate the effect on the man. I'd like to know how you handled that season, because one is hard enough, but two,
after we had experienced the exhilaration of hearing our baby's heartbeat for the first time, around 6-7 weeks, and then we had another appointment just a week or two later, and we didn't hear a heartbeat, and we just sat in the car and cried, and it was just this painful time of grieving a loss of something that we genuinely felt. And it was this painful experience of, like, I had accepted that I was going to be a father, and then that was suddenly stripped from me.
So hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fatherhood HQ. With me today is my brother Nick. I'll let him introduce himself. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me come in.
Right.
So like you said, my name is Nick Scholl. I'm here in Rome, Italy, serving as a missionary with Greater Europe Mission. And we've been here for 3 years now, but part of our long-term goal is to see churches planted, to see Italians come to faith, and then to see Italians lead churches and to disciple other Italians. And so it's been a very slow process as we've been getting to know people more specifically. A few people in particular seem to be people of peace. They just don't know Jesus yet. And so it's a process of getting to know them. It's really what we like to say is it's relational evangelism. And so we spend time with families who go to school with our kids. And then we spend time outside of school. We spend time on the weekends with them. We seek all those opportunities to invite. And we've been surprised at how quickly we've been invited back into Italian homes.
Right.
And so it's just bringing light where we can, with the hope of seeing those Italians catch the vision of the gospel that God wants to share with Italy, with Italians around them. And it's not exclusive to Italians, our ministry. It's working with, I'm talking with a couple of Muslim guys, reading the Bible with them. It's just whoever God puts in our path is who we're interacting with.
Exactly.
And I'm a father of 2 little kids. I have a 4-year-old Emily and a 1-year-old Levi.
What does fatherhood mean to you in this season, and how has it changed your life?
So in this season, I feel like fatherhood has been challenging. So a few months ago, we decided to move houses. We were paying a little bit too much, and with the different circumstances that were coming up financially each year, we just decided that the easiest way to cut cost and the fastest way to cut cost was to move houses. And so that for me was a big load of responsibility on me. And in a sense, it was one of the most challenging seasons of my life, spiritually as well as physically, mentally, emotionally, because it fell to me, right? I took the responsibility of my wife and I, Alex. We were both looking at places. We were both, looking at different agencies and so on and so forth. But it fell to me to make the calls, to kind of vet different houses and see if that would be a good fit for us. And I really felt challenged in that way. It just really felt like God was showing me, hey, this is a responsibility of yours as a man. This is a responsibility of yours as the head of your household, as a husband, as a father. And with that, it came this sense of growing in endurance, growing in perseverance,
Right.
as a father. And I think that that's been attached as well to how I've been fathering my kids in this season. I've experienced maybe more frustration, easier to be frustrated, and it happens to all of us, especially as it's come to the summer too.
Yep.
Here in Rome, it's toasty. But at the same time, it's been beautiful to see how our family has transitioned and how I've been able to lead in that way. As in, an example is we consecrated our last home. So we prayed over each room of the house. We talked about memories that we had, and that was something that I wanted to initiate. Growing up, I lived in the same house my entire life until I went to college.
Really?
But since moving here, my mom had moved away from my childhood home, and I wasn't there to say goodbye. And so that was something that was deep in my heart that I wanted to do for our family. We've lived in this home for 3 years, and we want to say goodbye well, and we want to remember all the things that God did in that, and pray over it for the next family. And so as we move into this new home, that's something that I've initiated as well. How can we pray over each room of our home to consecrate it, to protect it through prayer, and and also prepare well for the memories that we want to experience here. And so it's been a lesson for me, I think, in the last 6 months of headship, and it's changed my life in the sense that I'm seeing that there are things that I have to do. There are things that I have responsibility over as the head of my household, as the father, as the husband,
And as a priest.
and yeah, exactly, as the priest of the home, as we would say, and as a missionary, as a someone in ministry too. Um, it's been good. It's been good. And I think that that's a word that we often overuse, but I think as God looked over creation, he said, this is good. And as I'm seeing the challenges that I've faced and that I've faced them, that I've stood up to them with God's help, it's good because it's been challenging. It's grown me in perseverance, and it has changed my life in that it's given me a more long-term perspective of these small things that I'm doing now, like praying over the home, or praying over an old home, praying over a new home, initiating things like that. They're going to pay dividends in the future for my kids.
Absolutely. So, off camera, we had a conversation, right? Your daughter, Emily, is 4. So, if my math is correct, she's COVID baby.
She is.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So she was born in April of 2021. In early 2020, we were seeking to come to Italy. We had all of the funding in place and everything. And then we applied in February for a visa to come here. A non-Catholic religious visa is how we had to term it. And in February, we were denied over some paperwork issues. And then in March, we reapplied. By the time March hit, everything was so bad and so shut down here that they didn't even accept our paperwork. And so that was something difficult that we had to experience. But then we went back to Colorado, where we're from, and we started paying off debt. We started continuing to work towards how can we prepare well for going to Italy to serve God.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, there kind of came up a discussion of kids, because we'd always thought, oh well, we'll wait until we get to the field to try. And through that season, it was just like we have all of this space, I mean, I say free time loosely, but it was just, it felt like God was saying, there's not going to be a perfect time to have a kid. And for us too, it felt neutral. Like one of those decisions that it's neither God is saying, oh, absolutely, this is a door I'm opening, nor was it something that was a no. It was just, if this is something that
for it.
yeah, like he was opening the door for it. And so we started trying, and it took us about a year to get pregnant with our daughter Emily. And in that year, we experienced a couple of miscarriages. One was around 4 or 5 weeks, and then another was between 8 and 10 weeks. And so it was a challenging season to walk through, to experience the joy of, the discovery of finding out, oh man, she got a positive pregnancy test. Oh man, she got 2, she got 3. And Alex was someone who checked regularly. So we had multiple to go off of. And then to move on to the devastation of man, this sucks. We've experienced this devastating loss. The expectations were shattered. Our hearts were shattered, really. It was a really challenging season. And it was really hard to put ourselves in a position to trust again, to try again. Because it was such a hard thing to experience.
When families or couples go through miscarriage or miscarriages in your instance, people kind of understate the effect on the man. Obviously, the woman is the one who's going through the physical, changes that comes with the whole situation. But I'd like to know how you handled that season, because one is hard enough, but two, I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, I think it was. I handled it as well as I could. I don't know if I can say that I handled it well or if I handled it poorly, but after we had experienced the exhilaration of hearing our baby's heartbeat for the first time, um, around 6 7 weeks, and then we had another appointment um, just a week or two later, and we didn't hear a heartbeat, and we just sat in the car and cried, and it was just this painful time of grieving a loss of something that we genuinely felt, and it was this painful experience of, like, I had accepted that I was going to be a father, and then that was suddenly stripped from me, um, and so it was this moment of, how can I support Alex well? And I in one sense, I wanted to push off some of my own grief so that I could be there for her, but when I was alone or when there was time to really think about it and maybe Alex was asleep and I was, just laying there awake, and it just became, questioning of, like, well, is this something that I did? Is this something that she did? Or is this something that God has given us, or has allowed to happen to us for a reason? Or is this just the way of the world, of a fallen world? And through that, we kind of experienced this moment of understanding that we weren't going to hide this. I know that a lot of times it's something that couples not necessarily hide, but they keep it to themselves because it's a very painful, vulnerable thing to share that you've experienced such a loss. And for Alex and I, we knew pretty much right away, but it took us some time, maybe a month, to really experience the full breadth of the grieving process. It's not that we've grieved all of it yet, but it's still, that was a point where we'd reached. Okay, I don't think we should keep this quiet from friends. Obviously, family knew, because this is a testimony that God's given us, a testimony of loss, but of seeing that God is still faithful. And He was faithful in a few months later when we decided, okay, and it was something that I had initiated with Alex. How can we grieve this well and not rush into trying to fill that space, fill that void of loss with another baby? Because I think that's something that very quickly you try to do is, oh, we had a miscarriage. Well, what's going to fill the pain? What's going to fill the loss there? You hope or you think is going to be another baby, but really, we need God's presence in that, and we do need to grieve that well. But so a couple months later, we were pregnant again with our daughter Emily, and thankfully God brought us all the way through to term for her.
Amen. Amen. When you were talking, you mentioned something along the lines of you wanted to be there for your wife, kind of like push your own grief aside and then try and be the man of the house, help her deal with what she's dealing with. So let's talk about the main crux of today's conversation, and that is why we as fathers need to be husbands first
Hmm.
before fathers. Now, it might sound very contradictory because usually when people become fathers or mothers, people tend to focus all of their attention on the kids. But therein lies the problem, because you were first a couple before the kids came.
Mhm.
Fast forward 20 years, 25 years, the kids are gone and you guys are back to just being yourself. So can you talk to me how, in practical terms now, how you were able to be there for Alex?
Yeah. So part of it was just being intentional, and giving her time, because my wife tends to be, and I think it's knowing your wife well too, because she tends to be an external processor, and so in a lot of senses, we did talk about the miscarriage and the loss a lot because she needed to hear it. She needed to vocalize the way that she was feeling. And for me, I'm an internal processor, and sometimes it's really hard for me to give space for her to do that, particularly when she wants to do it at 10 or 11 p.m. when we're laying in bed. And I'm sure a lot of men out there can commiserate with that sensation of like, you're ready, you're closing your eyes, and boom, there's a question, and here it goes. And you're up for another, who knows how long. And so for her, I think I needed to be very compassionate in that way, and really, in a sense, quiet myself, like to not express maybe frustration, or not express maybe, oh, we're on this again, because it was, a whole month. The first month was, we talked about it pretty much every night. As we're laying down, she's laying there, and usually she falls asleep very easily, and I'm the one laying there for a while before I fall asleep. But she was laying there and just asking questions, or just crying quietly. And I think it was a thing that I needed to do, to just be silent right there, to just be present, and to be present both mentally and physically there with her,
Right.
and to let her know, even just through so many words, is that
I'm here.
I'm here. Yeah. What do you need right now? Do you need to just vent about this? Do you need to vent about maybe anger that you're feeling towards God for allowing this to happen, or do you need to vent just about, or do you just need to cry and weep? Or we can do that together. And I think it was a picture of how, you're right, when you make a commitment to be married to someone, that's lifelong, and you're a parent for as long as your kids are with you. It, like, on this earth. It doesn't matter if they're in your house or out of your house, but it does change the dynamic. Is that when you're an empty nester, are you still, you're still married? And that's an issue that's happening today. Is a lot of empty nesters are finding that they don't have things that are in common anymore, and they held the relationship together, for the kids, and then once the kids are gone, things fall apart. So how do you prioritize your wife in that? And I think that was something that I needed to do, in just giving her the space to experience what she was experiencing, to grieve what she was grieving, and then to find the place in me where I could say, and where I could grieve too, and then to step in and just be present. And that was, I think, the most real thing that I can say, the most applicable thing that I can say, is being present, physically, and then putting your phone down. Because it's so easy to pick your phone up when you're grieving. You just want to numb your mind.
Numb
Yeah,
pain.
numb the pain. But sitting there in it, it showed her how much the loss meant to me, and it showed her how much she meant to me, by showing her that I cared enough to just listen, or to just be there, and not offer advice, or not say, I think you should go see a counselor, or not say, ma'am, you should talk to someone else about this. No, that's my role. I'm there to be present with her.
When we first had our baby, right, we had our first child, Zayn, I had no idea of how to deal with being a father, right? I'm sure you and I
Yeah.
were both in the same boat. But one of the things I struggled the most was sexual intercourse. Because post childbirth, mentally, you know that she's gone through trauma, she's gone through pain, and she needs time to heal. But here you are, 6 months later, the gates of Jericho is still closed. And you're wondering what's going on. And then I personally struggled with that, because I almost thought, well, I can see the wounds are healed physically, but it didn't occur to me until the older gentleman told me, listen, she might have healed physically, but she hasn't healed psychologically yet. Give her time. But in that moment, I realized that I was being selfish. So I want to ask you, which areas do you think men could do better? Judging from your personal experience, men can do better in terms of being understanding and empathizing with their wives.
Yeah. I too kind of experienced that same thing. It wasn't necessarily a frustration thing for me, because it was I don't know. I think it was something where I knew, okay, and for us, it was maybe a little bit shorter of a period of time for Alex. But that was something that we had talked about beforehand, and I think that open communication is key. And I think that we could do better about talking about our needs. I had a friend actually, and he was experiencing the same thing. They just had their third kid, and again, it was 6 months, and then 7 months, and then 8 months, maybe 9 months passed, and he had asked. He tried to initiate. He tried to initiate in different ways as well, like being more emotionally intimate, to see if that might not as a trick, but to see if that might engage some other part of her to
Mhm.
want him physically. Um, and honestly, the only thing that I could tell him was just giving her time, because this is in essence, it is a selfish thing that we're asking of them. But at the same time, he I told him, you need to be clear with her, that this is a need that you have, and it's also a desire that you have. Like, it's not just a need. Like, there's been some research that's shown men have a lot less sexual need than we often emphasize, and it's more of a desire for intimacy. And obviously, sex is that, it's
Yep.
intimacy on every level. And I think that what I encouraged him to do was to seek her, to pursue her emotionally, to pursue her in a different way, and there's very practical ways that we can talk about, like bringing flowers, or writing just a simple note, and showing her that you're pursuing her emotionally, asking her how she's doing, and really meaning it. Not just a question after the end of the day. It's like, how are you doing? But really asking that question with intention, and maybe adding an adverb in there, like,
Mhm.
to make it more specific. How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing spiritually? How are you feeling physically? Do you need like a back massage? Do you need your feet rubbed?
Yep.
I know Alex, like, it feels like almost every day that she's like slowly like, oh, your foot up on me when we're about to watch something, and it's like, I know that it's coming. It's not even a question anymore. It's just there. Um, and so, yeah, I would just suggest that open communication is so important, to explain where you're coming from, where you feel like you're maybe not being neglected, but you feel like there is an opening, and that if the physical healing is there, what else is going on in her heart, in her mind, that might be preventing her from moving forward? And is it just a question of time? Because that's what my friend's wife kept telling him. It's like, I just need time. And honestly, it's a very frustrating, and it seems like a cop out answer, but really, oftentimes it is just that aspect of needing time, and continuing to pursue her. Because if we stop pursuing her emotionally during that same period where we're very needy, I think she's gonna say, "Oh, well, he doesn't seem to need that." She's gonna write it off, because we're not being open about our communication and honest about what we what we need and what we want with her, not from her, with her.
Okay, but sex is just one instance of
Mm,
several other. But when those other needs aren't met, what happens when resentment sets in?
mm. That's just something that I've experienced a little bit more frequently. For me, I tend to blame myself for a lot of things, but I also tend to gravitate more towards, and I'll say this openly, sexual temptations. When I'm feeling underappreciated, when I'm feeling like what I've been doing isn't being seen. And not in the sense that I need everything that I'm doing to be out in the open. It's like, oh yeah, give me all the praise. I'm not really a words of affirmation person when it comes to love languages, but when I'm not getting a little bit of that, I don't know. I'll give you an example. Like, when I come home after doing something, or Alex comes home after a busy day, and she sees that I've done the dishes and that the kids are doing okay, and we haven't watched, two movies to try and keep them quiet, and she sees that the house is taken care of and I'm doing well, just seeing her shoulders relax, just seeing her visible appreciation of what I've been doing is a huge encouragement for me. But I think every man is different in what we need from those opportunities, and I think resentment can really quickly come in when it's like, man, I've been putting my nose to the grindstone for 2, 3 weeks, and I haven't heard a word of, man, thank you for doing that, or I haven't had one of those opportunities where she's been um, thankful, or grateful for some of those things. Resentment, the enemy is very quick to just toss that in. It's like, oh man, she's always like this. Oh man, she never thanks you for what you do. And it's so quick to jump to that. But I think we have to remember that our wives are individuals as well. And that's not always the first thing on their mind.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, that open communication is important. So when I'm starting to feel underappreciated, I don't go up to Alex and I don't say, and say, hey, you're not valuing me as a husband. It's more like, hey, I'm just feeling kind of run down. I'm feeling like what I'm doing isn't enough. And just even putting it that way, she gets this look on her face like, how could you ever think that? And then she goes on to explain, and then she gives you, in that sense, what you need because she knows that's what you need. But she can't read your mind.
No.
And in the same way, so it's like when resentment is coming, I think we need to be very clear with other men that, hey, I'm feeling this resentment. Would you pray for me, or would you remind me that I need to be open with her about that? And then we go to them and say, I'm just feeling like everything that I'm doing is not adding up to anything. Is not enough. Um, can you tell me where you're seeing me um, do well? Asking her for constructive feedback and also for encouragement. That's what she's there for. That's why God built us to be together, is to encourage one another. And in that sense, we're given more of the responsibility for certain things in different dynamics, different relationships, happen all the time. But I think when we're open with them about, I'm feeling like I'm not really appreciated for certain things, I think then they can see, oh man, I haven't been saying some of those things. Let me say that now so that he can be encouraged. And then we can have another moment, or we can set, kind of like even a schedule of like, hey, each week we're going to talk about how we feel like each other's doing, even just 20, 30 minutes of like sitting down. How do you feel like, you're doing, or how do you feel like I'm doing as far as, household stuff, as far as government stuff, as far as, our various responsibilities, work stuff,
Yeah.
and exchanging that conversation, and then reminding each other or showing each other, wow, I'm really seeing God do this in you. I'm really seeing how you're just just taking it on. You're doing amazing. And having those 30 minutes just to converse often will lead to more than 30 minutes of encouragement.
Of course. Now, I how do I say this? It almost seems like a consensus
Mm,
across board. Most fathers that I've spoken to are very quick to let me know that they feel like fatherhood is a thankless job.
mm,
And it almost feels like when you do your job as a father, no one really notices it, right? No one says anything about it. But the moment you drop the ball, it almost feels like the sky is falling, right? So I'm happy you just brought that up. I'm happy you said that, because I'm sure someone watching is gonna feel like, listen, I'm providing, I'm present. I'm not just a father who brings finances. I am physically there. I
mhm.
change diapers. I give the kids a shower. I do the dishes. I cook. I allow you out time with your friends just so you can unwind. How come I'm not getting any sort of acknowledgement for all of this that I'm doing? So I'm very happy that you brought that in. Now, as fathers, we know our kids learn by observation.
Mm, yeah.
You can preach all you want. The kids are going to do what they see you do. So I feel as fathers, we need to love our wives visibly in the presence of our kids. That way, they have a reference point.
Yeah.
Boys have a reference point of how a husband should love his wife. And the daughters have a reference point of how a wife should expect to be loved,
Mhm.
right? Now, on the flip side, it also helps your kid realize that daddy loves me, but he loves mommy more.
Mm,
It kind of gives them perspective. I mean, we might think the kids are too young to notice these things, but they notice that, listen, daddy loves me. I'm daddy's favorite thing, right? But daddy has proven to me time and again that his wife is his first love.
mm,
And then the moment kids know that, there is almost a sense of, in Nigeria, in Nigerian lingo, we say you take dressing. They sit up. They realize that, listen, I can't manipulate this against this. I can't, you know how kids ask the daddy for candy. Daddy says no, and they run to mommy. Mommy says yes. Now pitting the two of them against each other. So when the kid realized that, listen, I love my wife so much, and I'm not going to break the rules that she let down just to pacify you. It also helped with discipline.
So the dynamic you just described, we're experiencing right now. Our 4-year-old Emily is even unashamedly asking one of us for one thing and asking the same thing, even if the answer is yes. She still asks the other person, and I think she's testing that boundary. She's testing that bond between Alex and I. Are we on the same page?
Yeah.
But it's funnier, more frustrating, but funnier. When she asks me for something and I say, no, we're not going to do that right now. And then she immediately goes to Alex, are we doing it? And
I guess he is.
just, or even especially tricky when we're in opposite rooms, and sometimes we're not on the same page, or sometimes like we have a different perspective of how things should go. And Alex says yes, and I say no. And then we have to kind of discuss, well, who said what first? And then we can kind of rationalize, what we're going to do from there. But with our son Levi, he's 1. I mean, he's almost 16 months. He'll be 16 months tomorrow, and it doesn't seem like any sort of discipline works on him. For Emily being a firstborn, I don't know. I think there's a difference in a dynamic of a firstborn.
Yep.
Emily was like, one time, like she was reaching for an outlet, we slapped her hand, we said no. Maybe a second time she did it. That was it. That was it. We don't touch outlets. Okay, there we go. And Levi, it's just, he's determined to do everything that we say not to do. It's outlets, it's fans. My goodness, with all these like tiny little holes in the fans, he wants to see if his finger can fit in there.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how many times we say it. We've tried time out. It just makes him upset. We've tried, spanking, and that just makes him hit. And so it's just like there is an aspect, and this is all in the home. And so in the home, it feels a little bit more like we have not free reign, but we have the opportunity to be like, okay, we're going to discipline, and it looks differently than it does outside in Rome. I feel like when we're around Italians, it's not that our standards change, but it's interesting to see also, at least for Emily, that she tends to behave better when we're out and we're around other Italians. And I think she understands the dynamic of this is not my safe space, and the rules are different here. Rules are different either outside, just like at the park, or with other kids, but especially when we're in another person's home. We explained at one time that no, we don't jump on the couch. Maybe we do at home, or vice versa. However you train your kids, or however you say, or whatever rules you set, right? And the rules are different here, and she understands that dynamic. Levi is too young to understand that dynamic, and so I think it's been something that we've been much more proactive outside of the home with him, whereas it almost seems like we're almost, I wouldn't say helicopter parents, because I hate that term, and I've never, like, my mom wasn't a helicopter parent, and so I don't think that I am, but we tend to be more proactive. It's like, okay, we see him, like, you can kind of read his mind when he's walking around on the sidewalk and he catches the eye of something like that's on the street, whether it's a car parked on the street or whether it's something in the street.
Beeline.
You can see in his head, he's like, I'm gonna go touch that. And we're like, we're instantly like, we grab his hand, and it seems to help. And so we have to be more proactive, I think, outside of the home, because we don't want to let it get to that point of, okay, now I have to actually discipline. And when we do get to that point, we try and make it a little bit more private. So it's like, okay, Emily, we're going to go to the bathroom and have a conversation. And whether it results in, us just sitting there for a few minutes, or whether it results in something, no, this was something that you deserve, maybe a spanking, or something that we need to talk about, where you're going to lose a privilege that you have, like during the day. Like, she gets a certain amount of screen time during the day, and she might risk losing that. And a lot of times she'll stop doing what she's doing because she doesn't want to risk that. And so she understands that. But when we're out, we try and make it a little more private, because we know that Italians have a lot of different perspectives, and as well as the law is different here.
So every guest ask the next guest a question.
Sure.
Right. So in the previous episode, we had Pastor Lauren, and then he has a question for you. And I'm going to read. How might you help a man in his second marriage, when he has children from his previous marriage, how might he honor the mother of his children while prioritizing his current marriage?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, and that's a challenging one. It's a challenging dynamic. My family actually kind of experienced that in a way. So my mom was married, her first marriage, she had my sister. And between us, there was a big difference. There was 13 years of age difference. My mom got married really young, and then she got divorced really young as well because she felt like she was missing out on life. Um, and she wasn't a believer at the time either. And so that's a big factor. But when we came along after my mom's second marriage to my dad, or even before we came along, my dad, I think, did a really good job of trying to connect with his daughter-in-law. Um, and on the other side, uh,
Sorry, you mean stepdaughter?
yeah, stepdaughter. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. And on the other side, my sister's dad was still very much a part of her life. And so I think it depends on the dynamic between the parents a lot of times. So if there was maybe an ugly ending to the first marriage, that can be really challenging and traumatizing for the kids too. Because maybe, I mean, obviously, they might not understand the whole dynamic. It depends on how old the kids are too. They don't understand the dynamic of why it went wrong or why the parents aren't living together anymore. Why are mommy and daddy separate? And why do I have to either split my time with them or just live with one of them or the other? And so I think it's variant. I think on a lot of different factors, on maybe the age of the kids, the degree of pleasantness with which they left the first marriage. Obviously, this none of this was God's design. He intended for us to be married one time to one person, and there are extenuating circumstances, and the Bible makes that clear about what those are. But I think that moving into a new marriage, how does he handle his ex-wife, and how does he handle um, his current wife is even more important when you have kids involved.
Yep.
So with his first wife, I think he needs to show her, if they're both believers or if he's just a believer and that was maybe a cause of the tension and the split, he needs to show her the utmost respect, even if it's not deserved. And that's a really hard thing to do, especially for men, because if we've been wounded or if there's been wounds there, we tend to be very stubborn about not entering into that place and not giving even respect if there's a problem between two friends even, and there was a big deal that kind of split them. It's really hard to even think about that person in a positive light. But I think that knowing that this other person, this first wife, is the mother of your kids, you have to have the respect for her so that your kids will see that they need to respect her as well. Because if it becomes a dual custody thing or even a single custody thing, I think it's imperative that both parents understand that they still have active and important roles in their kids' lives, even if they're not together anymore. Because if they sense that there's not respect between both of those people, they're going to disrespect either one or the other person or both and not listen to either. Um, Whereas prioritizing your second wife, this other person that's entered into this new relationship with your kids from another woman, I think that's also a challenge. But you have to let that relationship grow naturally between them, because a lot of times, and I mean, you see it in movies where they make it comedies where this guy marries another woman and he has kids, and suddenly these girls are desperate to get rid of this woman when the dad is trying to force them to be together or force them to enjoy their company. When in reality, it has to be something that they make a connection on your own. Um, and so one of the things that I think, three things that I think are key to any relationship, and this is true of having this dynamic, is connection, intention, and time. In connection, obviously, with your first wife, if you're not connected by anything but your kids, you're still connected. And you need to be intentional about making that an important thing, making that important that this is still your mom. This is still, um, I'm not replacing her in any sense. A, it's a decision that had to be made for one reason or the other. And depending again on how old the kids are, I think you have to be sensitive about how you explain that. But making sure that they know that this is always going to be their mom, but that this new person, it's up to those kids It's up to both people, for the new mom, the new second wife, to find a connection with them, and then to intentionally build on those connections. And then time. It's not something, it's one of those three, like, one of the three factors is time, and you can't control that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say, okay, in 6 months I'm gonna go from here in these kids' eyes to here, or in 6 months we're gonna try and plan some get together where the ex-wife and the husband get together with the kids to celebrate a birthday party, because that's a big deal. We've experienced that in my wife's family, in the sense that her parents were divorced, and with grandkids coming along, those two don't get along very well. Her dad and her mom don't get along, and putting them together, how do you do that if, the parents want to, do they do 2 birthday parties? Do they do, a mixed birthday party and just deal with the carnage? Or, it's like, how do you handle that? And I think it needs to be handled with respect, especially treating your former wife with respect, and then obviously prioritizing your current wife in showing that you have to put all of your effort into building this new relationship with her, but then you also have to let this natural relationship develop between her and your kids, because forcing it doesn't work.
Appreciate that. Nick, thank you very much for coming through.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much.